Hey, welcome back. So I've got a lot of stuff on my table here and I have no idea what it does, but I'm going to show you anyways. So this video is going to be on diesel heaters, how to power them, and some of the different conflicts you'll run into with not having the proper sized wire, regardless of what your voltage actually is. So to start off, I want to show you this shunt. So the screen for this shunt, if I go into my settings here, you'll see I've got this calibrated to a 20 amp hour battery here at the top on my thumb. And so we're currently at 100% state of charge. Bring that back over. Currently at 100% state of charge with 13.7 volts. There's no amps coming out. So to explain a little bit of what we got here. So I've got a 20 amp hour lithium battery. It's by EcoWorthy. This has been fully charged. I charged it up overnight. Nothing's really been used on it. Very, very little. On a shunt, the negative comes out. This is a Victron shunt. So the negative comes out, goes into here. Your shunt's going to read on your negative charge on your battery. So on the other side of the shunt, then, I've got two different leads coming out. One is to this 12 gauge SAE plug. The second one is going to this is a 12 volt cigarette style plug that receive a standard cigarette socket like that. Yeah, I had this previously in my first video on this diesel heater, part 1. So on the positive then, so I've got 3 wires coming off of there. One of the positive wires is going into the 12 volt SAE plug. One of the wires is going into the positive on the cigarette style plug. And the third wire goes to power just the shunt. It's the only thing on here. There's nothing else. You'll have to trust me on that. On our diesel air heater, scoot this to the side for a moment. On the diesel air heater, just so you can see what's going on here, this is the power wire for the fuel pump for the diesel heater. This is the main wire harness going into the diesel air heater. And then what I've got coming out, there's just the wire loom for the display. And then I've thrown a multimeter into this connection here. So currently nothing is connected from the battery to the diesel heater. So then on the other side of for the diesel heater, I've got the mating pair for the SAE plug to be able to run that direct. Here is the fuse that comes standard on a diesel air heater going into the wire loom. So there's the mating pair for the SAE plug. And then I've got a 12-foot extension wire for a cigarette plug extension. So I want to show you. It's right here. 12-foot extension. Make sure that you can see this well. Okay, so 18 gauge wire, 15 amp capacity supposedly, 12 foot for 12 volt. So what I'm wanting to replicate in this video is potentially your best case scenario. Potentially your best case scenario for powering a diesel air heater. My personal opinion is the SAE plugs provide a good connection. You can get those in multiple sizes. These are 12 gauge. I've got others that I've got wired into my Axiom at 10 gauge just to give it a little bit better power supply. But a lot of people, if they don't know these exist, a few years ago, I didn't know these existed. So a lot of people might say, hey, I got a 12 volt cigarette plug in my vehicle, in my camper, in my trailer, on my Blue Eddy, on my Jackery, on my DIY power box, and I want to run a diesel air heater off of that. So why doesn't it work? Well, a lot of people run into a low voltage issue because of the fact of the wire gauge that's actually supplied in a cigarette style plug, cigarette style socket I'd mentioned before about the gauge of wire, how it just simply can't provide the needed amps for the fire up procedure. When you push the power button on a diesel air heater, you'll see, I'm going to show you the entire fire up sequence on that and get it up to running, get it up to temperature. But just to explain what's going to happen, you'll push the power button, the fan's going to start running. Eventually, a few seconds later, the glow plug is going to start running. That's then going to start pulling up to about 10 amps. What I've seen is often about 8.5 or 9 amps, depending on your battery voltage. But so the glow plug is going to start running. The fan's going to kick up considerably. It's going to start to fire it's going to then start to pump the diesel fuel. It's going to start the fire inside the burn chamber. Once it gets up to temperature, generally the fan and the pump start to cycle down a little bit. And in a previous video, I'd mentioned that you could go camping for a weekend, heating your camp tent, box, trailer, whatever, for about 2 nights, running about 10 hours per night off this 20 amp hour battery running a diesel heater. That's on low. You're not going to be able to run that on high setting. I just want you to be able to see what some of the settings are going to be and some of the power demands going to actually be on that. So let's get started on this. Also, I've got a temperature gauge, which is around the side here, and that's the outflow of the diesel air heater right there. So there's that temperature gauge right there. You'll see that temperature down there start to climb. Let's just simply setting inside there. And since you're not going to be able to necessarily see what all's running, I just want you to be able to see as the temperature starts to climb on the hot air exhaust that you heat your space with. That's what this one's going to be. So, all right. So first off, and then there's the multimeter. I guess the other thing to mention, this multimeter here. So right now there's nothing plugged in. This multimeter is reading at the junction of the power supply for the diesel air heater with either of the power inputs, either from the SAE or from the cigarette style extension. That's reading what the diesel air heater would be getting at the end of its factory supplied wire. I'd say that to be, most of this wire right here is actually for the fuel pump. So for the most part, the power wire for the diesel air heater comes down here to this wire connection here, comes out, goes into a fuse, and then is right there at the wires. So the small gauge wire that comes from the diesel air heater company, at least on this brand, is only about 20 inches outside of the case. Okay, so I'm going to try and do this with as little editing as possible so that you can see in real time. So again, this is connected to this 20 amp hour battery. Connect that. You've seen this power up. You may be able to see that's currently taking about 0.14 amps. And that's just really for illuminating that the screen. Additionally, you should be able to see right there, hopefully there's not a glare. Right now it's consuming about 2 watts just running that screen. So I'm going to push the power button. I can hear a little bit of a click. You can probably hear there's the fan running. Did something there, I'm not sure what. Let me shut it off. So pull this up into view a little bit better. So at that battery, it's dropped to about around 13 volts. It's currently pulling 6 amps, 83, 84 watts coming off of that battery. Hopefully you can continue to see that. Try and scoot in just a little bit. Sorry for the movement there. Okay, so the Victron shunt at this point is reading 12.62, 12.61. The multimeter is reading 12.45 right now at that location. Again, that's just at a very short distance. So the pump has started running. You may be able to hear that the diesel heater burn chamber has started running. Total amps coming out just short of 9 amps, 110 watts. Voltage at this location is at 12.4, 12.52. Our outfeed of hot air for the heating environment is just very slightly coming up just a little bit. This screen has just gone into a dim mode. 12.36, 12.51, pulling 9.04 amps. Maybe you'll see a little bit of smoke coming off the diesel exhaust back there. 9.21 amps. I see a little bit of exhaust there. Sitting here inside the Axiom trailer with the door open. You see the temperature start to climb on the outlet, 12.85. So at some point there, the glow plug has turned off because it's only pulling about 3 amps of power right now. Our voltage has gone back up just a little bit, 12.8, 12.89. Our outfeed temperature is continuing to climb. Right now, this will continue to refresh. I hadn't showed that. So here at the bottom of this screen, that's the time remaining at the current calculated time. So right now, the time is going to start climbing a little bit because of the fact that it's recalculating from the larger amp draw, and now it's recalculating to the lower amp draw. So on this diesel heater, there's 3 little bars illuminated right there. That's basically the internal temperature. So as that goes up into the red, and I've got it set on the lowest setting, which is supposedly 8 centigrade. As that starts to warm up and you start to see this temperature warm up, as that burn chamber warms up, it can then start to cycle down. You may see here on high, this thing ticking away. That 20 amp hour battery, right now it's showing it can last about 4 hours to 20 minutes. Right now the current watt draw is 41 watts at 3 amps. And right now it's, I believe there's 2 more bars right there that it'll show. So it shows kind of a teal. It's teal, so it's gone to red. I think there's 1 more red that it'll show. Outfeed temperature is now up to 100 degrees, 102. That's very welcome because it's pretty cold in here with the door open. Voltage at the shunt, 1292, 1289, 110 degree outfeed temperature. And with these current settings, 97% time remaining, and that's now climbed up to 5 hours and 15 minutes. So now it is showing all the bars illuminated here. 126-degree out feed temperature. And it's pulling in some rather cold air, so it's wanting to warm up nicely before it shuts down, or idles down, I should say. Runtime, if you can't read that, it's 5 hours and 43 minutes. So hopefully this isn't like watching paint dry. We're just waiting for this thing to get up to temperature before it can slow itself down. And then you'll see this current 5 hour and 50-minute runtime really start to climb up. Things always take longer when you're waiting for them. Or would you like to look at my face? No? That's understandable. Okay, so that didn't take long at all. So I do want to show you as so it's severely slowing down right now. It's currently just slowly ticking away. The fan's just barely running. 9 watts is what the power draw is, 0.6 amps. Our voltage has climbed up to 1312. The multimeter is 1306. And then this runtime here is going to continue to climb as it recalculates from its past usage. Let me pull a screen on this. I can show this way. So if you see the lines across here on this graph, the blue is the amps, our current, and the orange is our watts. And they're in direct relation to each other. But if I come across here, you'll see that's when it was first powered up. Right there is about when I plugged in the unit. So from startup, which is 9:46 to, see, now it's 10:53. We're about a minute. I apologize for the bad camera angles here. We're about a minute into the run while it ramped up and then maintained at about 9 amps for the next couple moments until it fired. So that's 21:10. See right there, we're 21:10:51. So 9 p.m. 10 minutes and 51 seconds to there. So we're about 2.5 minutes. That was the burn cycle, or the glow plug cycle. And then the glow plug was able to turn off. And in this case, because of how cold the air is, it took from basically 13 minutes after 9 until about 20 minutes after 9. Go back here. We're still pulling 8-9 watts. And like I said, this has continued to climb with time remaining. Still pulling about 0.6, 0.7 amps. Right now it's showing 1 day and 2 hours. That if I don't run out of fuel, I can continue to run that. And so before I touch the temperature sensor over there, right now the outfeed temperature is about 139 degrees. Nice and warm. So I'm just going to set that on this side of the heater. That's the temperature sensor. And you can start to see what it'll start lowering down. You'll start to see what the incoming temperature is. Or I could maybe put it over here a little closer to the intake. But it's somewhere in the mid 20 degrees right now. I'm going to shut this off because diesel heaters, you don't want to just shut the power off, or you don't want to just unplug them. So I've turned that off. You're going to see the watts and amps start to climb again. Just going to set that back there. Hopefully you can see it good enough. So what's going to take place on this? Right now we're at 63 watts, about 6 amps. What's going to take place on this is the diesel heater is starting to cool down its burn chamber itself. At the very last moment, the amps are going to kick up quite about like they do on a normal startup sequence. And the glow plug is going to fire additionally. It's going to throw a couple pumps of diesel fuel in there to try to burn out the chamber, try to clean things out. So right now we're 8.6 amps, 112 watts, 9.13, 9.01, about 8.97 on the amps. So right now that glow plug is burning. It's trying to burn everything off and try to get the burn chamber fresh for the next run. It's pulling off 112 watts. And you can see that I've got a second diesel heater running in here to try to warm up in here just a little bit because it's pretty cold. But you see on this temperature sensor, it's now cooled down to about 41 degrees. So we're still pulling 8.92 amps. I can hear that kicking up the fan because the glow plug is now turned off. So it's down to 1 watt. Excuse me, 1 amp. And it's just trying to still continue to cool off the unit. Now, I'm going to move this temperature sensor to this coil of wire that is, again, this is a 12 foot cigarette plug extension. I'm just going to group a few of these together actually and put a zip tie on it. Because, okay, we're now down 0.1 amps, 0.1 amps, 1 watt. It's just the light that's illuminated for now. So I'm going to disconnect that. Okay, power's off. There's no draw. And that's just reading basically nothing. So now I'm going to take this supposedly rated for 15 amp cigarette plug extension. We've now powered up, showing 0.15 amps, 2 watts. Make sure you can see all this. Okay. Now we're going to start the same battery, same voltage. The only thing I've done is change the power supply. So I'm going to pull this up so you can see. Maybe you can see. I want you to pay attention to this temperature of those wires. Right now, it's struggling to pull now 4 amps. And I'll show a comparison between how long the burn cycle in the glow plug ran before or how long it's running this time. We're struggling to get to even 6 amps, 77 watts. This wire the other day felt pretty warm. So see if you can pay attention to this as well. I'm going to put the microphone over here by the fan. 8 amps. 9.23 amps, 118 watts. I'm hearing the glow plug run. Excuse me, I'm hearing the pump run. Just heard the EO1. That's our low voltage cutoff. That's our low voltage alarm. See our temperature climbing at our wire because it's heating up. It's still trying to pull 9 amps through it. It's still pulling 9.5 amps. Our temperature gauge is still climbing on the coil of wire. Now it's up to 50 degrees. Still 9.5. It's almost up to 51 degrees. And I can tell you it's much warmer than that, but this air is quite cold in here. But it's showing, it's flashing a battery symbol there, showing the E01 code. And it's basically right now, it's just trying to shut off. And so I'm going to pull that before anything works too hard. Now I'm simply just going to plug back into our SAE. This one's unplugged. We're back to our SAE. We've kind of reset here. Turn it back on. That wire heated up to 55 degrees according to that. But I can tell you it's much warmer than that. So we're at 1 amp. And so again, like I said in my first video, the battery, the diesel heater can be scalable for what you want or what you need or what you're trying to do. I'll try something here in just a moment to see if I can use a really small battery pack to run this once it's fully running and the glow cycles are over with. So we're at about 7 amps, 90 watts. Our wire is not connected to anything, but the warmth of it's still kind of coming out, so it's at 56 degrees. Here the fan is kind of ticking away. 9.04 amps. Did something to lose my voltage. Oh, I meant to show that. So the pump's running. So in testing this yesterday, as I was trying to get the setup right, at this point, I forgot to show that just now. I think my voltage meter timed out on me. I didn't catch that. Maybe it's in the video, but I was reading about 8 volts off of where the incoming line was due to the power losses. So 8.67 amps. Everything's the same as the first time I ran this. It's firing up. You can probably hear that. The little fuel pump's ticking away. Same battery, same diesel heater, same video. I've got no trick photography going on. There's no hidden wire anywhere. Everything's being measured through this shunt visible through this display. You can see it's still ticking away there. This timer here, that number 2, is showing that this current power-up sequence has been 2 minutes. So since I switched the plug back over to this one, that's 2 minutes. So we're still pulling 9 amps. I've got 2 bars of warmth there now. So I put that power probe, or the temperature probe, back over to the out feed of the diesel heater. Okay, so now the amps have gone back down. watching paint dry again. I'm going to choke this down a little, see if I can accelerate the warm-up sequence without getting a fault of some type. So what did you guys do fun this weekend? Leave a comment in the comments there where you guys plan to go camping or using a diesel heater. Talked to one guy about doing some ice fishing. I think Minnesota, Wisconsin. That would be awesome. So I guess to that point, so running completely at high, it's just about, yeah, it is at high temperature. So running completely at high, 20 amp hour. Right now it's showing a little bit over 5 minutes or 5 hours of run time. So if you took this out for the ice fishing shack, you could be able to run for about 5 hours, maybe catch your limit head in, or if you're able to let it idle down. Like I said, you could run it for quite a while. So I've got two different scenarios I want to show, so stay tuned here. So once I get this thing to idle down, I fully believe, I haven't tested this yet, but I fully believe you can run it once it's down to its cruising speed, at its low idle. I do believe you can fully run it on this extension wire. So it's pulling 3 amps. That is a pretty thin wire on there. It's a pretty poor connection, really, with the cigarette plug. Let's try it. I don't know if you're not really able to see how fast this is spinning, but it's running. Okay, so I fired this back up. I wanted to revisit the possibility if you could sustain running this once it's started on this extension wire. So you can hear the diesel pump running. There's the fan running inside the heater. Our outfeed temperature is at 161 degrees, 1305 at this point. I think there's a possibility I jostled this loose, which is one reason I don't like these cigarette style plugs. I'm going to keep some pressure on this. We're still running. So again, the heavy amp draw, you definitely need a larger capacity wire. For sustaining it, you don't need quite as much. Let's test one other thing. So 12 feet of extension, 12 feet of extension. We're currently running off of here. So I'm going to disconnect that, plug that one in. 24 feet of wire. Let's see what happens. We're still running. We're pulling 8 watts. Pump's still running. Fan's still running. Coming out at 147 degrees. That hasn't changed. But we're, in case anyone can't see that, 0.6 amps, about 8 to 9 watts. So like I said, this system can be scalable for what you need. Alrighty, well, hopefully that's some good information for you today. I do appreciate you checking out this video. If you've lasted the 35, 40 minutes or so that this has taken so far, you're a trooper. I'm going to try and speed this up. But I did want to share this information. So 20 amp hour battery, completely possible to run diesel air heater off grid. And again, that showed, I think, about a day and a number of a couple hours of continuous run time. And exactly what I said in my video about a week ago was you could take this camping for a weekend. You could run, arrive on a Friday, for example. You'd warm your bed, run it for 10 hours overnight, and then shut off in the morning, fire it up again Saturday evening, warm up your bed, your camper, your tent, whatever, keep it on low as much as possible. Ramp it up a little bit when you first arrive, and then set it down to low. On these heaters, unless it's about 20 degrees, we keep it on low inside this trailer. It's well insulated. And if we were to, we've camped plenty in 40-degree air where we've ran a heater and woke up in the middle of the night because it's so steaming hot in here because this thing will run you out. So I do appreciate you checking this out. Leave some comments or whatever. If you got questions, I can try and break down the data for you a little bit more. And if you got questions, comments, or whatever, put it in the box below. If this has been helpful for you, I'd appreciate a subscription. Give me a thumbs up, all that jazz. And got more videos coming. Thanks.